Hello everyone, good evening. And this video tonight will be about the ultimate question that every single person, doesn't matter if you are Asian, if you are Italian, you are American, or whoever you are, even my bagel asks me this question every day. The question is, should you be using Castrol 10W60 engine oil that's recommended by your BMW E90X M3? Now, guys, let me tell you something. I'm going to keep the video nice and short. If you are not happy with it, you can click the video off right now. But if you manage to survive the entire video, then I believe you will gain something from me, because I'm the original author of how to warm up your rod bearing properly by my special under 3000 RPM driving method. Click on my channel, subscribe, and you will see how do we look after our rod bearing on the E92 M3. Okay? Now, I want to answer to some of the questions that a lot of you people are not understand why 10W60 seems to cause a lot of problem on the rod bearing. I am not affiliated with any workshop on the internet, but I can tell you this, that most of the workshop on the internet that changes rod bearing for people, they still ended up telling everyone to use 10W60. The theory is very, very simple. Why is it 10W60? A lot of people say that 10W60 causes problem on the rod bearing. That is absolutely fucking false. Sorry about my language. I have to use a strong word so all of you people will listen to me, all right? The reason why it's not really the truth is that, let me do an analysis that you will understand why, okay? Just give me a moment. This is a K&Y jelly lubricant that a lot of people will use to make sure that their condom are nice and slippery. Okay? The theory is very simple. When you engage in sexual intercourse, that if you put a drop of K&Y jelly in the most solid form without adding water, that is called 10W60. Now, when the K&Y jelly is in a very solid form, it doesn't slip. It's very sticky, right? So if the K&Y jelly in the most solid form, as you squeeze it out of a bottle, it is very sticky. The moment when you shut off your engine after driving your E90X M3, the minimum space that's inside of the rod bearing will still have the quite thick residue of your 10W60 oil in there. What people don't understand is that 10W60 is a very strong film strength oil. So what it means is that, just give me one moment. I'm really sorry. The dog ate away all the jelly. What it means is that if you put K&Y jelly one drop, and then you go like this, pretend this is rod bearing, you go like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, you can feel that the smallest drop in there, the friction is, as the rod bearing is turning, or this is a rod bearing, and you got one drop of K&Y jelly, which is very thick. The thickness is like very thick 10W60. As the rod bearing is turning, right? As it's turning like this, the very thick, smaller quantity of K&Y jelly, which is equivalent to 1060, will be nice and lubricate, will be nice and slippery. But the problem is when you start using 5W30 or 5W40, it's basically K&Y jelly, adding water. The thinner it is, the more water you add. Yes, during the cold stop, it's very slippery. But the point is that when it's nice and thick, it produces more friction as you go like this, or as you go like this. Okay, you can try with your wife. It provides more friction. But when it's thicker, the barrier of the lubricant is thicker. So the condom underneath or the shaft underneath of the rod bearing is actually less contact with the metal, or in the case, the condom is less contact with the other component that you are trying to avoid contact, if you know what I mean. So it's very simple. If you have 10W60 in your M3, right? When you shut off the engine, the sticky stuff is still inside of the rod bearing. When you start the engine next time, it just means that between the rod bearing and the what do you call that in English? The crankshaft or something. I don't know how to call that in English. As the engine starts, there is more friction. Okay, this is why a lot of people say is the 10W60, the M3 feels more gutless. But the reason why you need a 60 weight is once it's warm up, as shown in my video, when you rev at 8,000 going like this, or you're doing this very, very hard, that the thickness is going to create a proper shear protection between the shaft of the rod bearing or your penis against, you know, whatever thing you're scratching your penis with. Okay, the main thing is that people are having problem with 10W60 is because when you squeeze a drop of KNY on your component, right? On your component, it basically means that you can go like this right away. Okay, you're gonna go like this nice and slow, so the thickness of the viscosity will cover everything. Then once you cover everything, you go like this very quick, or like this very quick. The shear is nice and strong. Now, there's one common mistake that people don't understand. 10W40 flows exactly the same speed in cold start as 10W50. Because the 10, it's a cold start floating. So there are some idiot on the internet saying, will 15W50 be better than 1060? Absolutely not. 10 is the fastest flowing oil with a 60 weight. So it means that if you look at the viscosity chart on the internet, with a 10, it actually supports up to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Google it yourself. So basically what it means is that if you live in somewhere where it's snow, this oil is still okay. You just gotta make sure that you drive the car during the cold stop and you don't thrash it until you see the oil meter arrow top and bottom. Okay? The shear is very good. When you drive M3 in the cold weather with 1060, the metal virtually never touches each other. But you're gonna have to be patient driving the car under 3,000 RPM like I showed in the other video. Once you warm up, you can rev the shit out of the engine. Now, it's not that 550 is better. M3 needs 1060. Okay, the 60 weight will protect. It's like a very nice and thick coating, because you're revving the engine until 8,400. There's a lot of speed inside of all the components. It's going like this very hard. It's going uppercut, you know, like Street Fighter. Hold you can. You know, if you guys ever play Street Fighter in the 90s, Ken used to do hold you can. You know, the blonde guy, Ken, not Ryu, the guy that does Hadouken. Ken does the hold you can, right? He's got a fire on his fist. Now the 5W30, the 5W40 is not going to protect a shear on the fire. You need something like 10W60. It's going to cover it. Now, guys, remember, if I block the 60, it says 10W40. You're happy to add 10W40 oil in the M3. Now, the reason why 10W40 oil is cheaper is because it doesn't offer the 60 weight of shear protection. The thickness is not there for the hot. Now, why they can't make 5W60? Because in order to achieve the 60 protection on high heat, it's impossible to make the oil that thin to become 5 beginning. So 1060 is not a shit oil. It's an oil that is actually quite difficult to make for the oil manufacturer, because it needs to flow very fast at 10, which is equivalent to 10W30, 10W40. It needs to protect in the 60. So the thinnest they can make at 60 weight is 10. So you guys gotta understand that if you use 550, I believe 550 is the thinnest possible oil you should ever use on M3. Okay, my experience as a street drag racer, 550 probably, if you max out the RPM at 8,300 or 400 or whatever, you know, on a hot day, you only need about 5 run. The oil is shear. You can tell when the oil is shearing because your oil temp will be right high underneath, and the engine will feel like it's sort of choking, right? Now the 10W60, it will work under most of countries' freezing condition. If I live in any country that's -5 degrees, I will use 1060, but maybe the warm-up will take 15 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on the condition. But the country where I'm from, in Taiwan, this winter we have got down to 6 degrees. I use this. The M3 absolutely flies. Guys, remember, E90X M3, and like most of the German car in the early 2000s, like C32 AMG, okay, E55 AMG, they all have a tendency of a heat problem. This is why all the aftermarket kit, they focus on oil cooling, okay? Unfortunately, M3's stock oil cooler needs a 1060 because the oil cooler that they use is pretty average. It needs something, everything about your E90X M3 is tailor-made to have 1060 thickness, okay? To have a 1060 thickness to buy you time. Now, why I recommend Castrol? Castrol is probably, in my opinion, not the best racing oil. But do remember, even if you use what's so-called not a good racing oil, this is still a 10W60 weight. Don't give me the bullshit that a 5W30 or 5W40, 5W50 with all the Kung Fu ingredients is going to outperform 1060. It's not. You know, this is kind of like saying, I don't do any weights. I'm a skinny guy now because last time I'm more fat. It's still the same guy as last time. I am not, even though I eat a lot of sushi or I eat a lot of seafood, I'm not going to be somebody that takes Viagra, okay? The main thing about 1060 is the thickness is there. You need to focus on the thickness of the oil first, then the formula. Castrol have a very good tendency of very quick warm-up within the same class, okay? But it's not like motor oil or maybe other brands that it's very heat resistant. But do remember that 1060, the weight is still a very heavy duty oil, okay? So a lot of time, a lot of you people are getting paranoid about this 1060 issue is because you guys are a little bit too young, I think. Some of you need to be around 40 years old to 50 years old to understand what 90s was about, to understand what the early stage of 2000 was about, okay? Because now with all the cars like Tesla and all the new technology that does not require warm-up, but do remember, M3 is not a shit car. The rod bearing is not shit. It's the driver you that's shit, because the car in early 2008, okay, they could get the transmission right. They got a very brilliant transmission. Now, when you downshift, it auto throttle for you, okay? All this auto throttle, this throttle blipping, blah, blah, blipping is fantastic. But the problem is that they couldn't get the engine right. The engine was sort of still a little bit 90s concept, because let's not forget the S65 V10 actually came out very, very early, okay, in the 2000s. And they put in 1060 because the BMW M engineer knew that they were building a real race car. But back in the early 2000s, the technique, the engineering that they had need to work in conjunction with a very greasy oil, okay? Now, once the 1060 warm up, the hotter the 1060 get, the thinner it becomes, the faster the flow. It's not about when the engine's cold, the flow is slow, the rod bearing's damaged. It's not that, okay? The 1060 warms up a lot more slower than the 550 or the 530 or 520, right? But you guys gotta understand how oil works. Refer to the viscosity chart on Google. I don't have it here. The main thing that you guys gotta remember is that this is actually for the 60 heat resistance. Okay, for 60 heat resistance, this engine oil actually flows very, very fast. Okay, a lot of people say I will use 1030 or 1040 for my M3 because it feels better. Nah, you guys are wrong. If it's 10 beginning, doesn't matter if it's 1060, 1030, 1040, it flows the same. you feel that your throttle acceleration is faster because it's thinner still, because the back end weight, it's not 60, it's 40 or 30. So it's still ultimately thinner, and it's a cheaper oil, okay? But what I'm trying to say is you guys got to stick with 1060 and learn how to race drive the M3 like what it should be, okay? Because when you have one drop of KNY jelly, okay? Oh, I got the KNY jelly. I found it. Sorry, guys. This is the KNY jelly, okay? Okay, let's mix it up. So this is KNY jelly. So if when we go like this, let's pretend this is 1060, nice and thick. So as you go like this, can you see the coating is thicker? So when the M3 is cold, there's a cushion. So there's a lot of friction on the rod bearing against the shaft. Tell me in English, leave a comment, because listen guys, I gotta wake up tomorrow 7 a.m. to pick up some customer from Australia so I can make $5 on rotor blinds, and you know, I'm not a rich guy, okay? So look, it's nice and thick, right? And when you start the M3, the rod bearing is cold. If you keep the RPM low, it will spin at a very nice speed. Okay, the idea of keeping under 3000 is to spin this thick oil so it lubricates against the shaft. Now as the oil gets hotter, this 1060, as it gets warm, the flow goes faster, okay? But once it reaches the working temperature, the flow is still going to be slower than 530 or 550. However, the thickness remains a lot more better. So when you are downshifting your M3, you're going with your IP exhaust. Sometimes if you over rev by accident, it's like a very thick condom. Your rod bearing will never have metal contact. Okay, so yes, it is true. When you use 1060, you don't warm up the oil. Okay, so this is 1060. When you don't warm up the oil, because it's thick, you see how it doesn't drop? That's how 1060 work. Okay, you go like this really fast, the metal is going to contact. But when you use a 530, so when you mix it, this is maybe like a 530. You see it drops. So it's very slippery in the beginning. However, what happens is when the engines warm up. When the engines warm up, it's too thin. So basically you go like this in the beginning. Oh, it feels really good. But as you warm up, you go like this really fast. When you go like this really fast, whoever you're doing, it gets thinner. And that's when the condom break. The condom break is equivalent to rod bearing break. But when you go like this, you add 1060, okay? As the inside gets very hot, very, very hot, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. There are never any metal contact, okay? So back to the serious talk. Everybody with E90X M3 should use 1060. All the tuning shop in the United States, after they replace the rod bearing, they use 1060. But nobody have taught, no one have taught you guys that you guys got to go back to the late 90s, early 2000s, okay? You know, I remember when I was around 24, okay, that was a time when 46 M3 came out. I remember we used to start the engine, we let it idle for 30 seconds, and we just drive it very gradually in a manual car. And I will pick up some friend, and they say, wow, this V8, you can shift it up so early, okay? So guys, in order to drive an old car fast, is not to try to use a thinner oil, get lower end torque, but to rev the shit out of the engine of how it was built back in 2008. E90X M3, if you look at the German user manual, which you can download, they really recommend 10W60. Okay, now if you guys insist to use something thinner, remember, use 550, because 550, the cold flow is same as 530, but remember the back is a 50, so the high temperature part, it's going to protect the component. You know, engine oil price are very fair. 1060 are expensive because it's lesser quantity and harder to make, because you got an oil that can flow as fast as 1040 during the cold start, right? 530 is cheaper than 550 because 530 flows the same speed as a 550 during cold, but when it gets hot, the 530 is going to shear. It's going to go like this, and it's going to rub, and whoever you're doing with will have blood and probably divorce you, like my ex divorced me and kicked my Boxster's door. So a lot of people, why they say 530 and 520, all the new cars these days uses that oil, is because when it offers lesser high temperature protection, it's basically 1060, like I showed you before, add a lot of water. It's lesser friction for the engine. Not friction, lesser power strain for the engine, because 1060 using something grease like this, okay, as you go in, there's a friction. Not friction, there's a, how should I say, you gotta use more power to thrash it in. As you thrash it in, it may not be slippery, but the thickness, the thickness will gradually thin down. It will buy you time before contact, okay, or before contact, okay. So you guys gotta understand, it's never about the 1060 problem, because when you shut off the engine, the thick stuff is still inside of the roll bearing. It's a problem when 1060 are cold. You drive it over 3,000 RPM instead. Let me tell you something about 1060 oil. Even if you are in a -0 degree place, most of the engine oil start working at 70 or 80 degree. 80 degrees is a good number, right? At 80 degree, the 1060, because it's heavy, it flows slower. But remember, because it's thick, it doesn't need to flow fast. It will flow 1 round slower. The 530 flow 2 round, but the 1 round is nice and thick. The metal is not going to touch. So this is why when you use 1060, the engine feels like it's nice and greased up. Okay, the idea is use 1060 as you thrash it, get thinner and thinner and thinner. It buys you time so there's no metal contact. So guys, this is Tim from Taiwan. Remember to keep your engine nice and lubricated, to keep the oil on the maximum arrow. Don't stay in the middle line, because you want as much quantity as possible inside of the engine. So when you drive the M3 faster in a corner, it's like, when you're doing this, if you move the angle this way, like this way or that way, or you move it this way or whatever, which way, there's enough of 1060 in there. As you go this way, that way, everything get lubricated well, and she doesn't get angry at you. So guys, remember, you bought a car that was based in 2008. Drive it like how you're supposed to drive it. If you guys want, I'll do a video how I drive this car every day. I'm a 41-year-old captain, and I play 50 Cent. I play Linkin Park. I play all the songs back in the early 2000s, because when you play those music, it spark you back those memories. And when those memories come back, your gear shifting time is beautiful. And you know what you do when you race your stock M3 against some rich kid who's got a faster M3? You follow them home and you throw oranges at their car. Because if we can't beat them at the light, we surely can throw orange at them. This is Tim from Taiwan. Remember 1060 E90X M3, okay? Roll bearing should be replaced if the previous owner did not do 3,000 RPM. But I'm not replacing mine, because I'm planning to change my oil every 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers. Okay, and I'm planning to do a partial. I won't do the entire 8.5 liter. I'm only going to do 7 liters. Okay, and it's just like a cholesterol. You can't change all the blood in your body, but if you can change 80% of it, it's going to make difference. Okay, so this is Tim from Taiwan. 1060. If you got any question, ask me. If you don't like how the way I explain things, and I'm very, very sorry, but I will continue with the weight loss. God, I look skinny today. You guys, you know what I did for weight loss? I just don't eat. And how do you save your roll bearing? You change your oil. Forget about the oil filter. Just drain the first plug at 7,000 RPM every 3,000 kilometers. And probably every 18 months, you do the whole 8.5 liters. And another part that you guys can understand is that if your oil temperature start to rise quite quickly, it's time to change the oil. Nobody on the internet ever talk about how to warm up the roll bearing. No one on the internet ever talk about doing partial oil change. Remember, you learn it first from Tim. Adios.